The Ashe-Harrisburg section for the November lunch meeting. We're glad everybody could join us on Life Size. It's a little bit of a different setup for some folks, but hopefully it'll work out well. And I mentioned earlier, there's a settings on the right-hand side of your screen. If you didn't see that, you can change your camera, you can change your audio settings, speaker functions there. And then during the meeting and after the speakers, we'll use the raise your hand function there on the bottom to take questions. And everybody's muted except the speakers. So if you're a speaker, you have to mute yourself. But for everybody else, you're muted and you'll have to raise your hand so that Kelly can unmute you. So we'll just start with a couple announcements here. Bring up my screen. This month's charity is Toys for Tots. You can see the write-up here in the profile, and it's a great organization. And if you haven't already given when you registered for the event, you can still do that through the re-registering. I just did that this morning. I just went in and re-registered again, and there's settings here for donating both to Toys for Tots and also for the scholarship charity. So those options are available if you would like to do that, even after you've registered. The project of the year is also coming up. There's a write-up also in the profile that you guys can read down through. Paul McNamee is going to be collecting the project of the year applications. They're due December 30th. You can contact him by email or emailing the ASHE board as well. So look forward to some great submissions for both of those. One update that probably everyone is aware of is the funding shortage that PennDOT's been requesting. We just wanted to give you a little update. If you haven't already been aware, the department is $600 million needed for emergency funding due to reduced revenues from the COVID shortfall. I know there was a hearing yesterday with the legislature where they discussed, how things came about, and I don't know that they made any decisions or not, but something to be mindful of. And now is a really good time to advocate for the industry and to contact your legislatures and share your concerns to get approval for the funding request that PennDOT is asking for. I don't know, Paul, if there's anything further you wanted to add or not. I know you were following this pretty closely as well.
No, Jason, you covered it. It's it's pretty critical that we get PennDOT funding. I know Chris Sturt is on the line. I know Chris is in the midst of this as well. The COVID-19 has reduced PennDOT's revenue, not only on new projects, but this impacts existing projects, existing construction, existing design. And if we don't have a solution by December 1st, it's likely that a lot of projects are going to be shut down until July or more. So critical to contact your legislator, let them know that this is critical for the construction engineering industry to keep these projects moving along, and it's just critical. PennDOT really needs the funds. So APC, ACEC, ASHE, everybody's working on it, trying to get a solution to the funding at this time. So not real good news for the holidays, but hopefully we'll find a solution and can move forward. I don't know if Chris wants to add anything or not. So anyway, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, yep, no, thank you. So with that, with no further ado, I'll just read the introductions here for the speakers. Ben Singer is Portfolio Manager for District 8. He graduated from the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown. He began his career with the department in 2003 as a civil engineer trainee, and he worked in various positions within the district before coming to the district portfolio manager in August of 2020. So congratulations on your promotion, Ben. Next is going to be Steve Howell. He's a District 8 senior project manager, graduate of Penn State Harrisburg. He started out his career as department intern in 2008 and has worked his way as the district's load rating engineer and pavement engineer before becoming a project manager. So thank you for sharing, Steve. Derek Mitch is District 8 Assistant Bridge Engineer and Senior Project Manager. He received his BS and MS from the University of Pittsburgh. He began his career as a private consulting sector and in 2009 joined the department in 2017. So thank you to all three speakers. I think Ben's going to be up first. So go right ahead, Ben, and you can share your slides and we'll take questions for all three at the end.
Okay, two quick things. Can you hear me and can you see the screen?
We hear you, Ben.
Sweet, we
see
can
the
start
screen.
rocking and rolling.
Yep.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ben Singer. I am the District 8 Portfolio Manager. And I just want to give us a brief overview of, I don't know what happened. Something happened to my, oh no. Can you still hear me?
We hear you, Ben. We see your, I think it's your daughter on your screen. She's a
my
cute
niece.
girl.
Sorry. Sorry, it's my niece. Hold on. Something wrong with the computer.
No worries. No worries.
Got a lot of technology.
The share your screen button's on the bottom center of the life size, if you see that.
Okay, I'm back now. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Like I said, my name is Ben Singer. I'm the District 8 Portfolio Manager. And I just came here today to, formally introduce myself as the new Portfolio Manager and just give a brief update on, where we stand and things moving forward. There's been a lot of changes in the district, so I just wanted to go over some quick little things for our brief meeting today. So as Jason mentioned, this is just some of my background. Graduated from UPJ in 2003. Been with the department since 2003 and been a project manager for the last 10 years until I got my promotion to portfolio manager in August of this year. So it's been a nice windy road to this point. So as I said, there's been a lot of changes to the district design unit. Like you said, I am the new portfolio manager, and we also have three new senior PMs. Heidi Merritz, she took over for Jeff Al Savage in our district bridge unit. Nexa Castro and Steve Howell took over Doug Murphy and my spot in highway design. And we also have a new highway design project manager. His name's Pete Roman. He took over for Dave Slimak, who retired last year. And with the promotions of Nexa and Steve, there will be two new junior PM spots opening up. So like I said, things are changing in District 8 and things are moving forward. So for me, when I came to the position, I had some ideas and things that I see for areas of improvement, not only on the department side, but also on the consultant side. Like I said, this is not geared to just one side. We're all a team here. So I want us to see us continue working as a team. These are the areas I want to start working on heavily. The first one is parts and work order closeouts. One of the things that surprises me is there are a lot of parts and work orders that are left open. They haven't been finalized. I think that's one area we really need to work on, is getting those things closed out as soon as possible to make everyone's life easier. Another initiative I want to see is improved communication, back and forth between the department personnel and the consultants, and especially the consultants. When you're working on our projects, keep in touch with the district PM of any issues you may have on a project, and more importantly, any solutions you can see to alleviate those problems, because the sooner we know about it, the better. You don't want to wait 2 or 3 months until we have let status, and then an issue blows up that could have been dealt with sooner. Another area I'd like to see improved is networking. And this is on, like I said, for both sides. Like I said, we work as a team, and the things I've seen in the past, I go to the ASHI conference several times, and I think both sides really need to look at, networking with each other, because the conference we have every year, I think, is a good conference, but I think there could be more improved networking between the two sides. I think what I see happening is, a lot of times, the consultants are there like, hey, what projects are you going to advertise? What agreements are going to be advertised? This, and this, when really this conference is a chance for both sides to really network and get to know each other. Because from my perspective, this is your shot to, talk to the junior PMs and the senior PMs and other staff at the department who actually read the SOIs. So, being able to network at the conferences and other places, really helps, bridge that gap of knowing who we're dealing with. Another area is we need to improve overall efficiency. We pay you guys to do the projects, and we'd like to see quality submissions come in, and we do not like to see redundant reviews. So, we need to improve overall efficiency, especially in light of what happened. Money may get tight in the future, who knows? Another area I like to see done is work on standardizing our consultant evaluations. I know it's frustrating for you all to have like one district PM may evaluate you on one way and another one may evaluate differently. So I'm trying to work with our department personnel to try to standardize that so it's more consistent across the boards. And another thing, just to pick up, we are going to be starting marketing meetings next year. They're going to be held virtually. I believe a lot of them have been scheduled already. And then this goes along with the next point with SOI, statement of interest. The one thing I really would like to see improvement on your side is when you come in for marketing meetings and SOIs, keep in mind, what kind of projects District 8 is working on. I mean, I've sat on marketing meetings where you guys have set in, these grandiose projects, these big reconstruction, major projects. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of those going on in districts. We have more smaller, type, less complex projects. So, if you could tailor that, I mean, it really makes more sense, to me and the department staff, because that's the type of projects we're actually advertising. So, like I said, for marketing meetings and SOIs, tailor it to what projects we're actually working on here in the district. So, and then my next, and I think it's final slide, is the big one. With my position being vacant for the last year, we have a lot of agreements that need to be advertised. As you can see, we got 2 open ends, 3 bridge packages, and we have a couple project-specific ones there. We hope to have, get them things rolling. I don't know the time frame at this point because, as you stated earlier, with the whole possible shutdown, things are on hold. But these are some of the agreements that we hope to advertise soon. The way I plan on rolling this out is starting with the open ends and then the bridge ones initially, and then sort of spread out the next couple throughout the year, because I know it takes a lot of time and effort for you guys to put together a quality SOI, and that's what we want. We want quality SOIs because it's a hard decision when we pick a consultant, because there's a lot of great firms out there who submit quality SOIs. So I want to make clear to everybody that, you know, when you submit SOIs, there's a lot of competition. So, and then here's some more agreements that, like I said, we're hoping to advertise shortly, but there's a lot of work that we're going to be hopefully giving out hopefully next year. So get ready. We got a lot of work for you guys to do. So with that, I will turn it over to Steve Howell.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, yes, we hear you, Steve.
Okay. And you can see my slide now, right?
We see it.
Okay. All right. As Ben said, my name is Stephen Howell. I'm the new senior project manager, or one of them, at the ADO. My background was kind of discussed earlier, so I'll spare you guys the long story. But as was noted, I am the new senior project manager as of the beginning of this month. So, from a project manager's perspective, from the department side, it's imperative that the consultant PM is always cognizant of the project schedule. This means the current state of deliverables, what's in for review, what's coming down the line, how one affects the other, and their associated review times, which have significantly fluctuated in some instances due to COVID. So I would also throw the caveat in there now, which I'll discuss in a little bit, to be in communication with your department PM. They'll be able to give you a better insight on how those review times have fluctuated and get you some answers so that we can keep the schedules on track and the projects moving forward. The PM should also be aware of the project stakeholders, not just the department as owners, but other agencies, DEP, DCNR, Game Commission, Fish and Boat, also local homeowners and the commuting public as always. They should be an absolute expert on that project. They should know all the intricacies and information, again, associated with that project, even information that would be obtained or housed by a third party or a sub-consultant that needs to also be housed and known by the prime consultant. At any given moment, I, as the department PM, could be asked by upper management or executive level staff about the project, progress or status of a certain part, and I'm going to need a quick answer and a correct answer. And I, in most cases, would probably be reaching out to my consultant counterpart to either double check that or get that answer quickly. As for the quality of deliverables, the onus of quality rests entirely on the prime consultant. And I know you guys know that sub-consultant deliverables are still the responsibility of the prime. And we hear that, or I guess we read that in every SOI that, it says something to the same effect that you guys understand that the quality rests within the prime. But more importantly, I guess from a department PM, is how you plan on managing that ownership. I can't give you real examples with that, but that is something that I think you guys should take away from this presentation, at least, that we are interested in how you manage that ownership of the quality of deliverables. As the department hires consultants for our projects, we do so as a way of extending our team and deepening our experience base. I've bolded the word team here on both instances to emphasize that none of us are doing these projects alone. We have a support group on both sides that are ready to help and have a deep and varied background of experiences that are very useful and need to be tapped into. With both teams working on these projects, we get collaborative solutions that are more than just the sum of our efforts and the sum of our knowledge. When issues arise, like Ben said, please bring possible solutions to the conversation. Even if none of the solutions end up being put forth as the quote unquote ultimate solution, they will spur thoughts oftentimes and ideas that will reveal that end solution. We just ask that the consultant team simply take the next step once they've uncovered an issue or a problem with the current design. It helps everything on my side move a lot quicker if I can go and start digesting a possible solution, not just the issue. Here, each PM is going to do a little bit different than the rest of us. I'm sure all of you have, or at least most of you, have probably worked with multiple project managers from the department side and can concur that we all have our own little quirks, ticks, whatever you guys are calling them. But most of them are just nuances and things that we like to get, or the way that we like to get things done. Just a couple examples. Some PMs enjoy being the single point of contact. Literally every piece of communication that goes between the department and the consultant team or the other way needs to be handled through them. Other consultants might just enjoy being CC'd on the communication, maybe be involved in the initial discussion and then be brought back into it once the solution's been uncovered. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Others, like myself, just want to be, like I said, included in the initial conversation. Some PMs prefer to talk about the issues with a quick phone call, while others need an email for an email exchange for their records. I know I've taken a page out of Mark Malhenzy's book. I worked under Mark Malhenzy for a few years, and he is a monthly status email for most of his projects, if not all of them. I have kind of adopted that same mentality. It keeps me up to date, whether there's been issues on the project or not, and it keeps me in the loop as far as the decisions that are being made and what actions are being taken on the project. In all of these things, please establish these communication preferences at the outset of a project, or as you know, we're getting new project managers at the department as the new PMs take over the older jobs. Just establishing this kind of communication preference and understanding what each side wants in terms of communication will alleviate a lot of headaches down the road. Okay, so the perfect statement of interest. I don't have a silver bullet for you, but I will give you a couple things that we do look at. Each project manager on the department side, and I should say each selection committee member, brings different experiences to the discussion. Experiences we've had with different firms, different people in those firms, how they handle different projects and other experiences. We bring all of those to the committee during that discussion. Even if a given PM is not part of that discussion, chances are we've had that discussion around the quote unquote water cooler as to, you know, oh, this firm's doing really well with this. This firm is kind of struggling with this. We share a collective knowledge, but each one will bring something different to the table and to that discussion. Also, in line with those experiences, as Ben mentioned, your past experience that you note in your SOI should be geared towards the project. I don't know the quote exactly, but John Kennedy, at one of the ASHE meetings that we have in the spring normally, said something along the lines of experience on the Golden Gate Bridge will not correlate well to a culvert replacement project. That's always stuck with me, and I always think of that as I'm reading through these SOIs. It's great that some of you have done, you know, gigantic interchange projects, or, you know, actual work on the Golden Gate Bridge or the Bay Bridge or, you know, the George Washington. That's great. But if we're asking for an SOI on again, a culvert replacement, those two experiences aren't necessarily going to mesh up and translate well. So on the other end of that, on the other end of a project, we have the consultant evaluations. These are done at the finalization of each part or work order, and I think a few things need to be noted. Evaluations are not graded as if consistently exceeds expectations is a perfect score. This isn't a top-down gradation like a college paper or a project. Expected performance means exactly what it says. The work and the team met all the necessary expectations that were put on them from the department. This, in the end, is a very good evaluation. You've met all the required goals on time without issues. Exceeding expectations or consistently exceeds expectations would mean that additional requirements or burdens were put on the team. Something like having to shorten your design time frame considerably or work around some other unforeseen issue or problem. This means inherently that certain projects are going to lend themselves better to the ability to get certain ratings. For example, again, the smaller culvert replacement in general won't have much wiggle room for a consultant to exceed the expectations that the department has for that project. Getting an evaluation of expected performance on such a project would be a good evaluation. So with that, I guess they said we're going to do questions at the end, so I will stop sharing my screen if I can figure that out here and hand it over to my colleague, Derek Mitch. Derek?
Thanks, Steve. All right, do a mic check. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All righty, and do you see my presentation here?
Yes. Derek, thanks.
Alrighty, get going here. So they went through the bio already. My name's Derek Mitch. Got bachelor's and master's from Pitt, and then up until a couple of years ago, I was sitting on, I guess, the other side of the fence here as a private sector consultant. At the end of 2017, I joined the department as an assistant bridge engineer / senior project manager. So when Chris asked me to go through this presentation, he said basically to come up with some topics that I found interesting and things that I had learned from being on, this side of the fence as opposed to being on the consultant side of the fence. So this presentation on my end has a little bit of a mishmash of different things, but hopefully it has some good content there that, things maybe you've wondered, and now you'll get to see some of the behind the scenes stuff here. And then just a note here, I've had some internet issues today, so if that has a problem, I apologize. And like I mentioned earlier at the start of this, my daycare actually closed, so my girls are here today. It's COVID related. So if there's an interruption for there, I apologize. So here's our outline. The first topic we'll go through is how's a district organized. That's something, as a consultant, you don't really see too much of. Then we'll go through some contract issues and some of the reasons for delay from when you finish negotiating tech and price, then to getting your notice to proceed. Then we'll go through what LET status is, and what it means for you guys. Talk a little bit about virtual meetings and how to serve clients better. Then go through a little deeper on the consultant selection. We'll look at how the world kind of looks from PennDOT's perspective, which again is different than being on the consultant side. And then lastly, just some different points of views and maybe some things that both sides don't always seem to understand about the other. And in the interest of trying to make this, usable as a reference in the future, I've written out more stuff than I normally do. Normally, I kind of stick with just bullet points like Steve and Ben did, but again, trying to provide some information that you can, look at in the future. So first off, how's a district organized? So the first bullet point here, I talk about the CET program. That's a civil engineer trainee program. I think Ben and Steve, I think both of you guys went through that. Basically, we take civil engineers and we send them around every single unit within the district for basically a year. And that is to give them experience at each and every unit and understanding how each and every unit fits together. So it's pretty complicated and it's hard to see from the outside. I will say that every district is slightly different. And I've kind of, for this discussion here, I've given a brief overview, and then I'll dive in a little bit more on construction and design, because that's obviously the area where most of us work. So first thing, why is it District 8.0 and not District 8? Some of you may be aware of this, but I didn't know this when I was a consultant. The 8.0 means the district office, and then everything else, like a county maintenance yard, would, like for Adams County, would be District 8-1, and then Lancaster would be 8-7. So that's why it's always 8-0 or District 10-0, because you're always dealing with the central office of the district, as it were. So the main 4 branches of the district are, you're going to have the direct DE reports, which is your fiscal unit, and you're basically a district's press officer. That was Greg Penny, now it's Dave Thompson. Then you have the maintenance unit, which, although we don't tend to interact with them too much, that's where the majority of PennDOT staff actually sits. Then you have the construction unit, which also includes the highway occupancy permit. And then you have the design unit, which is where most of our work is with the highway, bridge, services, and planning. Oh, and I forgot to mention, traffic actually goes under the maintenance unit because it's more of a day-to-day type concern. So quickly looking at the construction unit, there's 2 main branches. There is the services unit, and then there's the ACEs or ACMs. So the services is basically everything that is not directly related to running a construction project. So this is like structure control, which basically acts like the bridge unit for the construction unit. Materials, finals, highway occupancy, and then local jobs, which are called FAM. And then, like I said, you have the ACEs, which actually run each of the jobs. And for the most part, these are 1-to-1, 1 ACE per major county. I think Mike Dieter's got 2, and I think someone else has 2. But for the most part, it's kind of a 1-to-1 setup. So going to the design side of things, we're under Chris Durda. There's 4 major heads under the design unit. The first is the highway engineer. That's Steve Moore. He acts as our technical authority on highway-related issues, and obviously he's the one who's signing off on design exceptions and those types of things. And under him, he has 4 senior PMs. So Steve Howell and Nexa are 2 of those PMs, and generally under them you have 2 junior or regular PMs. And if no one's mentioned it at this point, the general gist here is that a senior PM tends to have more consultant-led projects, and they tend to be the more complicated projects, whereas the regular PMs tend to handle more in-house design and then some consultant projects. And I say generally, or tend to, because the fortunes of war often mean that those lines get pretty blurry, but generally that's the breakout. And then the pavement manager is also under Steve, because obviously highway and pavement kind of go hand in hand. Under my boss, the district bridge engineer, Doug Knoll, we have 2 senior PMs / assistant bridge engineers for design, which means we are both assistants on technical type questions, and then we also run the larger bridge replacement jobs. And then there's also an assistant bridge engineer for inspection, and that's Ryan McCusker. And if you do inspection reports for like bridge inspection, those will be worked through his unit. And then each of us have, on the assistant for design, we have a PM who reports to us, and then we also have the H&H manager on our side. Next major unit is a portfolio manager. That's Ben Singer, who just was speaking earlier. Under him, we have our planning and programming manager, which is Nate. Nate tends to deal with more of the money, whereas Ben is more of the contract side of things. And then we have the district planner with the PennDOT Connects process, which is Michelle Tarquino. And then the last one, which is kind of a catch-all, is a design services engineer, similar to like in construction, where all the support services are under the services engineer. We kind of have the same thing. So this is your district environmental planner, which is Sharon Oken, and then NEPA and permits. Then you have contract management, utilities, right-of-way, advertising, and survey. So if you're dealing with issues on some of these types of things, you might see Rich Dean get involved, and that's why they're all reporting up through Rich to Chris. Okay, so moving on, now we're going to talk a little bit about some contract-specific stuff that again, I didn't always understand from the outside, and then we'll talk about some of the delays that occur from getting your tech and price negotiated to actually getting notice to proceed. Because again, from the outside, it's kind of hard to see what's going on with some of that. So the first point here is that engineering contracts don't actually have any money associated with them. And again, some of you probably know this, but some of you might not. So the easiest way to illustrate this is like an open end. So when you win an open end, like let's say one of those contracts that Ben was talking about earlier, you look at it as, oh, okay, I want an open end contract for $2 million. when you flip, the seat, as it were, and sit on the other side, we look at it as, okay, we have so many dollars of contractual vehicle to use. So we will slot projects in on those open ends. And so basically the contract, it has $0 with it. It only gets the dollars because those get obligated to the contract itself that then gets put on that open end contract. And the district capacity is limited for this. If you look in Pub 93, they'll go through this in fairly excruciating detail, and they'll give you District 8, we're limited to 27.8 million, with the idea being they want us to do more project specific as opposed to open-end contracts. So, again, from the outside, when I heard that, I was like, wow, it's a lot of money. But what I don't think everyone understands is that that pot of money is split between maintenance, construction, and design. So maintenance has their own issues with doing all the permits for pipe replacements that our maintenance forces use. Then we have open-end efforts under our traffic unit. So obviously there's signal timings, things like that. And then construction needs just as much flexibility as we do in design. So remember I was talking about how there's those ACEs that each kind of have their own county. Well, each of them has a construction inspection agreement to help with any projects that may come up. And then there's also a district-wide catch-all in case one of these projects, they use all the money, they can bounce to this open end for the district-wide contract. There's also construction management, which each one of these ACEs have. So once you total all these up, it only really leaves about $8 million for design, which is, again, only 4 contracts. And again, if these things run, I think the general expiration is about 5 years for these. So you can kind of see that the rate of us putting this out is fairly low. So that's how you get to your total of 28 million. Now we are rebalancing internally a little bit, shifting some of this construction money down to the design money. And that's kind of probably what you're seeing there with Ben talking about some of those open ends coming out. So now let's talk about executing a contract and some of those delays I mentioned earlier. So the first step, as we talked about, identify a contractual vehicle. Again, remember, money's not with the contract, it's with the project. So we're gonna use, this open end to do this project, or in the case of like Ben's advertisements, he's saying, these project specific, it's gonna have this engineering agreement number with this MPMS number, which is the project inside of it. So once those get done, you guys work on a scope and agreement with your project manager, and then you agree to the price. And so you would think, okay, we're done, let's get going. Well, there's 2 steps in red here that as consultants, you really don't see. So the first one is the planning and programming sets up the cash flow, and then the fiscal unit updates and executes the contract. And then I have get all relevant signatory and other approvals. So basically, you can't submit the contract for approval, which you may hear us PM say, you can't do this until you've done these 2 steps. So these steps I note here, they're important, but they're not really visible from the outside. And that's often why you get a delay from when your agreements are negotiated and when they get executed. So generally speaking, I think the easiest way to think about planning and programming is to think about it as the money coming in. So this needs to be fiscally constrained with the general idea that you can't have, $200 million worth of work if your budget's only 100. So whenever the DOT revenues increase, we can pull more projects forward in time and get them done. Whenever our revenue decreases or it doesn't meet expectations, we got to, push those projects out in time because again, it has to be fiscally constrained, within a certain time frame. So once the money has been requested, that's the price proposal that you came up with. Once that's been requested, we have to open a WBS element. And this is what it looks like down here at the bottom of the screen. You'll see that in ECMS sometimes if you play around. Basically, the way I think about this WBS is it's basically the bank account you're going to be drawing against to pay for the project. So money needs to be programmed. So they're going to the PM will submit a request to the planning unit and resource account asking for money, and I'll show you what that looks like on the next slide. And like I said, just like a home budget, there's only so much money to do different things. And just like a home budget, how much money is just lying around? None, right? Our job is to take advantage of the resources we have to improve our highways and bridges and all that fun stuff. So whenever we come to NEAT's unit or ask them for more money, they have to rerun these cash flows by pushing other projects out, pulling some in. They might have to do this over a period of years, depending on the size of the project. So this can take days or weeks just trying to rerun those cash flows. And this happens at a fairly regular clip. You know, they're probably doing this once every week or two to try and rebalance things. So it's a never ending process, but there is certainly a lot of time there to try and figure stuff out. So this is what it looks like on the inside. You know, if I'm doing a new contract, I'm going to send, I guess you can't see the two lines says Tina Forney, but it actually goes to our planning unit first. And this is me saying I need to increase PE by a certain amount and final design for a certain amount. And then I have to give a reason why. In this case, we're adding a small retaining wall. Nate or somebody on his shop will sign off, and then this will be sent back to the project manager to be sent for the next step, which is going to Tina Forney in the fiscal unit. So like I just said, there's still one more step. You'd think once you have your hours and scope and cash flow set up, you can begin, right? Well, no. Just because the cash flow works out doesn't mean you've actually modified the contract between the consultant and PennDOT. So you need to work with the fiscal unit to make sure any of your legal requirements are done. And generally that means you have to deal with our SAP system, which we'll talk about down here in a minute. So district fiscal unit, best way to think about them is the money actually flowing out of the district. So the planning is, like I said, kind of cash flow, trying to see what's going to come in, what we can accommodate in our program. And then fiscal is actually, writing the checks and modifying the contracts. So like I said, you need to modify the contract between the prime consultant and PennDOT to be reflective of the scope and price. So this is where we'll create a draft legal agreement. So this is after it's been reviewed by everybody and you've gotten that sign off from the planning unit. You'll send that funding information and that signed planning sheet to our district fiscal unit. Fiscal unit creates and submits a SAP 7 or 8, which is our way internally of modifying the Commonwealth's SAP system, which is what tracks all ECMS payments and all that fun stuff. And this ensures, they're ensuring the legal requirements basically are done to execute this contract. And when the comptroller looks to, when you submit your work order and there's different approval levels, when it says comptroller review, they're checking to make sure this step has been done. And so normally they're one of the last in the process. And once they've, clicked yes that this is good, the project manager can issue the notice to proceed or the work order that gets executed. So next topic here, let status. So I call this the reason why PMs get cranky every 3 months. So we call this quarterly let status. So that's where the 3 months comes from. And pre-COVID, this was a meeting in the ADE's office with all the different unit heads. So that's the ADE, bridge engineer, highway engineer, services engineer, and then the planning and programming unit and portfolio manager. So all these folks are gathered around a big conference room in Chris's office. And as the PM, you have to go in there and you have to explain or defend why your project is behind schedule. So it's a little daunting, obviously, when you go in there. And so as a takeaway for you guys here in the audience, this is kind of the reckoning time for the projects. If you have been overloaded with work and maybe you've worked on projects A and B, but haven't really done much on C, you're still gonna have to give, or your PM is going to have to give an update at this let status and explain why that project is not up to date. So basically what I'm saying is, you can let stuff lie for a little bit, but eventually quarterly, you're gonna have to have an update for that project. And then at the end of the year in December, we lock in the let dates for the next year. So that's one of the most critical ones because that actually sets our let dates that we're going to be held to for the following year. So the December one really is a critical let status meeting. Next up, virtual meetings. So a couple people have asked me whether we're going to continue to do virtual meetings coming out of COVID or not. And I think there's some good things. I think there's some things that maybe aren't so good. I think the public involvement part has gotten a lot better. We had always been planning to kind of move into the website-based and electronic form of public involvement, but obviously with COVID, we had to really step up our development of this process because we couldn't hold public meetings anymore. So we basically had to do everything electronically. So I'll go through that here in a minute and show you what that looks like. And so I think this is a good thing that'll probably stick around. Virtual field views are a bit of a mixed bag though. With some of the bigger projects where you can't really travel around, they might be good. And certainly you gain a lot of time by not having to travel to and from the site. So like a design field view may take an hour instead of all morning or all afternoon. So that's certainly a positive. but there's a lot to be said about actually walking the site. That's what I'm kind of pointing out here with this the second part. So I guess I could see in the future maybe E&E scopings have to be done physically, because that's kind of making sure you're aware of all the project issues. But then maybe like design field views or some of these later on field views, maybe you can do those virtually. But we'll have to continue to look and see how that evolves. So like I mentioned, we have the electronic or virtual public involvement. If no one's looked at it, under the PennDOT regional offices, under District 8, or any district really, you have this page here, which obviously ours says District 8. And on the right on the top, we have different links. So these construction projects / road work, think of these as the perpetual postings for the major projects. So like Columbia Wrightsville is going to live under here. And that will always be continually updated as time goes on. For minor projects, so we're doing a little culvert replacement or a superstructure replacement, you're going to live down here under the public meetings tab. And so these are generally 30-day postings, and this is what it looks like. And it's very similar to the plans display you would do at a local township office or that type of thing. But project description, photos, display, detour map, all that fun stuff. When it's going to start, how much it's going to be. And the nice thing with this is you can send a letter containing this link to anyone who got those notice of intent to enter letters, so they kind of know what's going on with the project. And this certainly in our day and age makes it a lot easier for the public to interact rather than trying to be at the township office one night per month for 1 hour time slot. Maybe that doesn't work for them. This way they can go to it 24/7 for 30 days and see whatever they want to see. So the next one, how to serve clients better. So this is some of the frustrations that I run into as a PM, and I guess my philosophy here is that you're as a consultant, you're trying to make life easier for the PM because that makes you easier to work with. Sorry. So some of these have been touched on, but I'll kind of give my take on them. So the first one is the "what do you want us to do" question versus "here are some ideas." So I think Steve already talked about this, but I think it's worth saying again. We're selecting you because in your letters of interest, you're saying that you're a very independent team, you have all this technical ability, et cetera, et cetera. So when a problem comes up, and if we're easy, anyone could do it, right? So there's always going to be problems. When those problems come up, come to us with an idea of what to do, and then a suggestion of what you think we should do. Don't just say, PennDOT, what do you want us to do? So just driving that point home a little bit more. Next one is signature lines on emails. Again, it's like drinking from a fire hose a little bit, working on the department side just because of the sheer volume of projects. So when you hit that reply button on an email, particularly to one of the more senior staff who may not know who you are, it's very difficult for them to, find out, how to get in contact with this person. So just make sure you always have your contact info on whatever reply emails or emails you send in general. Another big problem, again, particularly for the senior staff on our end, is minimalist email subject lines. So, if you just say, this is the, picking a name here, this is the McCall Bridge replacement or Mooresville Bridge replacement, internally on the consultant side, you all know exactly what project you're talking about. But you got to remember, we have a couple hundred projects going at any time as PennDOT District 8. So for us, always include the county, SR, and MPMS, because this is the info that they will use to look up in our systems what that project is. The next one here is overly silent or overly demanding. Again, going back to the fire hose thing, I do need to know that you're working on the project, but I can't read your email all the time immediately. There's a lot of stuff that I'm working on or any PM is working on, so we may need to get to it later. I kind of have to prioritize what I'm working on. In the same vein, reminders are useful. So every now and then, just saying, hey, don't forget about this. That's great. I have detailed ways of keeping track of my workflow, and I'm sure Steve does as well. But a friendly reminder every now and then is not a bad thing. Next one is minimal invoices. So I guess my general rule of thumb here is, I would not submit an invoice if the invoice is for less money than I have in cash in my wallet. So, this is the invoices for, $20 because it's, quarter of an hour for someone's time. That just creates more work for the PM to do. You're certainly entitled to do that, but again, if you want to make life easy for your PM, don't do stuff like that. Second to last, avoidable turnover on the consultant team. So this is, you send an SOI saying these team members A, B, and C are going to work on this, but we won this other job and we want to move the team off to this other job. Well, you were selected on the strength of that team, so please don't do that, I guess is the easy way to say it. And then again, primes are responsible for subs. I think we've hammered that pretty good, so I'm not going to go through that one. Next topic is consultant selection. So just some general questions that we always seem to get asked. So what process do we follow? Well, we follow Pub 93. If you didn't know it, Chris Durda is the guy who wrote Pub 93, and he's our ADE, so we follow that to a T. Do you read every proposal? Yes. Is it very time consuming? Yes. Is the competition fierce? Yes. Who wins? Well, I'll go through the scoring in a second. And what does number 2 or number 3 mean? Doesn't really mean anything other than you got the second or third highest score. So selection committee normally is 5 members, 1 senior staff. So this is bridge engineer, highway engineer, services engineer, portfolio manager. And then you have 4 other staff members. So this is normally a mixture of senior PMs, and then unit heads like, Carl in utilities or Dustin Palmer in right away, that type of thing. So we'll print out a massive stack of all these submissions that we got in, and then each person has to take a stack, and they have to read the entire thing, and then they have to give a score for each of those questions that we ask. See them here, we apply a weighting. They have to give a score for how well each person or each SOI answered each of those questions. So people always ask, what do you look for in those? Well, the first one that I always say is, did they answer the question? These questions get tweaked sometimes, on a yearly basis, it seems. So make sure that, whatever potentially canned answer you have, that it actually answers the question. Sometimes you have to use canned stuff for like the quality assurance. So it's very difficult to actually talk about that in the context of an individual project. So that's, acceptable, but some of the other stuff, it really shows if you can kind of tell if someone's using a canned response, I guess is the easiest way to say it. One of the things I look at is the size of the section versus the weighting. So if you've got a question that's worth 40 points and on a 5-page submittal, you spent, half a page on it, something's out of whack there. You really kind of have to match the size of your response to the size of the weighting of the question. Grammar mistakes are an obvious one. Again, we're talking about, how fierce competition is here. So if you give us easy stuff to pick at, like grammar, we're going to highlight it. Some folks go through and use highlighters for good and bad. I personally use a spreadsheet and I go question by question. So I'll read all 50 SOI's answers to question 1, then I'll start at the beginning and do question 2 and then do question 3. That way I kind of have consistent scoring for everything. General statement that wall of text is bad. Again, we're reading a ton of these. So if you can spice it up a little bit with a table or images, that tends to help. And then Steve and Ben talked about using the correct examples. I won't go into that more. So each team member assigns a score of 0 through 9 to each question for each SOI. Aggregate scores determined for each SOI for each PM, and then the winner basically just has the highest score. Number 2 has the second highest, and number 3 has the third highest. It's really that simple. Burn through these last 2 as I see we're running out of time here. So a quick look at how the world looks from PennDOT's perspective. All of us are involved in some way, shape, or form in project delivery. The folks in this room, or rooms, I guess here plural with virtual means, are either drafters, designers, or engineers. Then this is mostly PennDOT down here. So when you're at the drafter, designer, and engineer level, this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier with the naming conventions. You know what project 1 is, you know what project 2 is, you know what project 3 is, and you're an expert on the nuances of each of these projects. And that's, just and right and good and all that stuff. But if you step to being a project manager, well, you might have a couple of these in-house design jobs, but then you also have these, massive files of consultant design jobs. So again, it's tough to be an expert on each and every part of this. And then we have senior project managers who are responsible for 2 PMs and all their projects. And then they have generally slightly more complicated projects being run by consultants. Stepping back even further to the unit heads, they're responsible for all active projects and then even potential projects that we're thinking about doing. Same thing with the ADE. And so I guess the point I'm driving at here is, when you go to one of the unit heads or you go to, one of the senior staff here, their time is extremely valuable. And if they don't seem to have but 15 minutes to spend on a certain topic, it may very well be because they only have 15 minutes to spend on a certain topic. So like Chris is going to be a clearinghouse for any controversial projects, regulatory agency interactions, public officials, or state senators and reps who may have questions. So if you're going to go and bring a project or something to this level, you need to have your stuff very well organized, and you need to be ready to clearly explain, what the issue is, what your recommendation is, and all that stuff. So just all I can stress is be prepared, because you don't have a whole lot of time. Then the last is I wanted to go through some different points of view that I think both sides kind of have some, maybe don't understand about the other side. So things that consultants need to understand. Titles are less important than work product. So we see this a lot with the marketing meetings where you might bring the director of structures for the East Coast or something like that, some fancy title. And that person might be great and they might really know their stuff. But, as a PM, am I ever going to interact with that level of person? Or, vice president of this, am I ever going to see that person? Probably not. If there's a major issue, maybe it'll get to that level. But for the most part, we're much more interested in the people that we're working with. And that kind of gets echoed in the second line here. People is a greater than firm, but one person is not a team. So again, the people are more important than the firm letters in my experience, because I've seen big firms do poor work. I've seen little firms do excellent work. So it really does come down to the people you have working on a project. But I do want to stress to some of those folks out there that one person's not a team, and that kind of ties into the next one here, which is not giving work to a consultant is not a sign of distrust. There's many more qualified consultants than work. So I've heard people say things like, "Well, don't you trust us to deliver this project?" Well, of course we trust you to deliver that project. But you saw earlier how we do the scoring. If you have, one team member who's done work in Pennsylvania, but everyone else is, pick a different state, they're all from there, but they're going to support this guy, versus someone whose team is all locally based and they've done tons and tons and tons of jobs here, based on the scoring of your prior experience with those team members, the local firm is going to have an advantage. So this kind of leads into the next point, which is, I call it the Malthusian equilibrium, but this is supply and demand, right? You're always going to have enough consultants to satisfy the workload over time. It's always, the pool will always grow to that size. So again, getting back to the scoring, it's not that we don't trust people, it's just, there's only so much work to go around. The last two here is when a consultant makes a mistake, normally that ends up being me as the PM's problem. If that's in construction, it means I have to go talk to different people, apologize to them that this thing or that thing happened, and then I have to go to figure out a solution that makes the problem go away. So mistakes happen with this last bullet point, and just accept that. As a PM, obviously, if I'm constantly having problems with someone, that's not good. But as a general rule of thumb, it's much better to take ownership and say, yeah, we made a mistake here and we're going to fix it as fast as we can and make it go away. That's probably your best bet. I think this is my last slide. Things that PennDOT PMs don't seem to understand from your side of the fence. The first one is the challenge to stay billable at all times. So on our side, we don't have this problem. We're a network generator. We don't need to bring more work in. And that kind of ties into the second one here, which is work sharing between different offices in a region. I certainly have seen people come in and talk about how they do this great work sharing between our offices. As a PM, when I hear that, I hear, well, the guys doing the work on your project might not be the guys who, we put on the SOI, or they might not be the folks who, you could go stop by the office and talk to them. They might be someone in California or something like that. So, I know on the consultant side, that's critical to staying billable and all that fun stuff. But on the PennDOT PM side, we generate work. We always send our extra work to you guys. So we don't really see the whole workload and billability type thing. Number 3 here is, kind of ties into that with work sharing and then discipline specific workload. We tend to look at a project as, being a certain value and certain size of project. But on the consultant side, obviously you take that and you chop it up into the different disciplines who are going to work on it. So there might be a ton of roadway work, but no bridge work yet, or, vice versa. And so that's something that, on the PennDOT side, the phasing of those large projects and how the different workloads occur and at what times isn't something we deal with very much. And the last one here is the business model of sales and delivery. Again, getting back to the PMs just want to deal with the same person. I know many consultants have a sales side or technical sales side and then a delivery side. As the PM, I'm not real interested in how you guys are organized. I just want to deal with the same person who can answer my question and not get passed around. So that's it for me. I guess we're going to open it here for questions.
Yes. Thank you to each of you, Ben, Derek, and Steve, for presenting. We are going to open it up for questions. You can raise your hand there at the bottom of the screen. And I think Kelly's going to unmute each person as the questions come up so you can speak. I see we do have one person already.
Go ahead, Edward.
Ed, did you have a question or was that an accident? Okay. Lots of really good information from everyone here. I guess one question, has there been any shift in the funding focus? I know there's some other districts that have moved towards the interstates. Is there any comments that you would have regarding, any shift of your funding in the coming year, couple years?
I guess Chris or Ben.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a Ben question.
And could you stop sharing your screen, Eric, that whoever's speaking could come forward. There we go. Okay.
Ben, are you still on?
Yep, I didn't hit the mute button, unmute button, sorry.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I think we're still going to have a mixture of both. We do have some big projects on interstate currently. We have the 83 around Dolphin, 83 down around York. But I think more than likely you're going to see more work being done on the off interstate networks. And we still got an aging interstate system. So I think we'll have some work on the interstates, but nothing in terms of the big reconstructions. I don't see any big projects like that on the horizon. So I think, like you said, I think it's probably shifting a little more towards, smaller, less complex projects. And I think from what I'm seeing, just since I've been portfolio, a lot more bridges and intersection improvements, traffic related stuff. So that's what I see happening on the horizon.
Would any of that involve P3 projects? Do you have some prospective projects that might fit into that group?
I'm not sure. That would be more Chris's area of specialty.
So I don't see any other questions coming through. We are over our time, but I'll give it another minute if anybody else has a question. I'm seeing none. So thanks everybody for calling in today. We do have a December meeting. I think it's going to be the week before Christmas, the week of the 15th. And we'll have a project presentation that's still being nailed down, but stay tuned for some emails coming out on that. And enjoy your Thanksgiving break. Thanks for calling in and stay safe. Thanks, everybody. Bye.